You're probably looking at me like a crazy person right now, wondering why I'm wearing an aluminum hat. Well, kind sirs and ladies, I would argue that you, in fact, are the crazy one for not protecting yourself. All right? I'm wearing this because we're diving deep into the realm of a conspiracy today that I guess has been around for ever. Well, I shouldn't say forever, since about 1994. And it came to my attention around the same time as these drone sightings all over New Jersey. I kept seeing on these comments underneath these videos, Project Bluebeam in full effect, Project Bluebeam is happening, look into it. And so that's exactly what I did, folks. And let me tell you, it's pretty crazy. And you need to protect yourself right now. All right. So Project Bluebeam, just a little background, was first initially introduced by this Canadian conspiracy theorist named Serge Monst. I don't know if I'm saying that right because I'm not French. Just a little backstory in him. He was born August 12th, 1945, and died on December 5th, 1996. But even then, that's a conspiracy in itself. Some people believe that he and an unnamed journalist, which, shocker, unnamed, were actually assassinated, and that the Canadian government kidnapped Mont's daughter in order to try to dissuade him from talking about or investigating Project Bluebeam. Very early on, like early 70s, this guy was talking about the New World Order. That's what he started to write on. That was the theme of most of his papers. He seemed to be inspired by the works of William Guy Carr, who was also deep in the world of conspiracies. And some would describe William as the most influential source in creating the American Illuminati demonology. I had to write that down because there was no way I was going to be able to spit that out. Like, this guy just, I guess, wrote a bunch of books on, like, demons and, I mean, just the demonology of, like, the Illuminati and, not diving too much into it, but how there's a higher infrastructure above even our world government controlling everyone and controlling everything. You might be asking, what is the New World Order? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm going to tell you. It's a term used by conspiracy theorists which hypnotizes, I guess, kind of, right? Which hypothesizes a secretly emerging totalitarian world government. Totalitarianism is a political system and a form of government that prohibits opposition from political parties, disregards and outlaws the political claims of individuals and group opposition to the state, and controls the public sphere and the private sphere of society. Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler are considered prototypical dictators of totalitarian regimes. So we've already seen totalitarian regimes within our, I guess, timeline, not necessarily of us being alive, but within the past 100 years. All right. And if you know anything about those guys, all it leads to is death, destruction, and pure genocide. All right. It's crazy. And there's nobody that can stand up to him because the way the laws are written, there's nobody who can stand up to him for fear of being killed. So leading into what we're talking about overall today is Project Bluebeam. All right. Now, this is one of the crazier things that I've ever researched. So overall, the basis that Project Bluebeam is presented as by Monst. I'm not really sure how to say it. Serge, or should I just say Serge? Maybe that's better. It's a conspiracy which he claims NASA and the United Nations are working together to establish a new world order by creating a technologically simulated second coming. All right, and it only snowballs from there. It gets a little bit crazier. It's so easy to do too, by the way. There's only 4 steps to completion. Step 1, which in my opinion is going to be the hardest one to prove or to pull off, is they're going to fake earthquakes. All right. They're going to create these seismic anomalies across the world. All right. So it's not going to just start in one spot and kind of move around, right? It's going to happen pretty like simultaneously across the world, which is impressive in itself. I'm not saying that the government probably doesn't have the ability to create earthquakes, but to create them all around the world, it would be very unlikely. But the point of this would to create these earthquakes is to then how do you say it? It's to fake new discoveries. So I guess is the best way to put it. So faking the discoveries that ultimately would bring to light the errors within religious text, specifically targeted at Christians and Muslims, arguably two of the most followed religions within the world. And this, in my opinion, like I said, would be the hardest to pull off due to the fact that faith and religion is very hard to just, once you show somebody who's very religious this, they're going to go, well, actually this, and it's just going to be this revolving door of we're not going to agree whatsoever. So it would be very hard, especially for a devout Christian or Muslim or really any religion, to pull them away from their faith and go, hey man, like you've been wrong this whole time because look what I found. Step two of this is, which is actually just hilarious. Serge has predicted that all across the world, you're going to see images of whatever deity that you worship. And I don't mean you in particular. I mean, in America, you're going to see like Jesus, right? Christian. I mean, now it's kind of obviously changed because there's so many religions within America. But at the time of this being released in 1994, they definitely were going to be more leaning towards Jesus, right? But if you were like in Afghanistan, you're going to see Allah, things like that, right? And all around the world, depending on where you're at, that you're going to see it's going to be beamed into the sky, an image of your God. They're going to speak all different languages. And then towards the end, they're all going to merge into one God. Essentially, now we wouldn't know as the normal people, but the people who are doing this, it would be the Antichrist, right? And but they would be claiming to be the one true God over all nations. All right. Step 3, it's very unlikely, but I would say it probably would be the easiest to pull off if we were going to do it. It would be beaming images of God's voice, God's image into your mind, using ELF, which is extremely low frequency radio waves.
Hey, fellas, how you coming with that machine that beams an image of the Christian God directly into people's brains?
Yeah, we're gonna have to call you back.
If somebody were going to try to do something like subliminal or try to project something in your mind or make you hear things or feel things, I would imagine that that would be step 3 would be the easiest one to pull off, would be to make you hear voices and different tones and frequencies and things like that. But they can't pull it off if you're wearing your handy dandy tinfoil hat. All right. So make sure you go to the kitchen and start wrapping it up. And then step 4, which is kind of the premise of, I think why people were correlating the drones and everything together. It would just be to make people who believe in God believe that the rapture is happening. And for those non-believers, believe that an alien invasion is imminent. All right. And so essentially the premise behind this step is that, again, NASA and the United Nations have created a device that can pull large amounts of people off of the earth. Right. And anybody in the past who's experienced an abduction that was just testing the that was just testing the device in small doses, right? And nobody's going to believe Farmer Jim, who lives out in the middle of nowhere, that he was sucked up and he was probed and stuff like that, right? But that's a good way to kind of start spreading the rumor of aliens and abductions. All right. Now, this guy Serge has written tons of stuff. All right. He's read several books, such as, and this one's a mouthful: Vaccines, Experimental Military Medicine, Liquid Crystals, Journalistic Investigation File, CIA, North American Free Press, 1994. And then this guy's always been a really big believer in like Second Coming, Antichrist, New World Order, obviously. So he also wrote what is called the Toronto Protocol 666. 1995. And there's a lot more, but he's most notable for Project Bluebeam 1994. So those are the 4 steps. All right. Step 1, earthquakes. Step 2, beaming images of God in the sky. 3 is to make you hear/see God in your brain via ELF. And step 4 is to make people believe either the rapture or aliens are coming and they're sucking people off. I'm sucking people up off the ground. All right. So 4 easy steps. Now, what happens when all this goes on? So people are going to panic. All right. People are going to panic. I would imagine we're going to make sure that very influential people are sucked off the earth. Right. The presidents, the prime ministers, the sitting governments, we're going to make sure they're gone. All right. And so it's going to create chaos. That's the overall goal of this, is to create chaos in this theory that Serge has created. Right. It's going to create chaos. And we as feeble-minded people, we're going to beg for somebody to step in and lead us, not only as a country, but as a united world. We are nuts. We're just going to tear each other apart. All right, I'm just going to say it. We're going to tear each other apart. I don't think anybody's going to say, hey, bring this guy in. Bring him in here. Run the whole world, please, under one true leader. Absolutely not. I do not foresee us doing that. However, they came up with a way to deter you from, rebelling. And so my big question, and I'm just assuming before we get into that, because I'm still on the old sucking people off the earth, what happens to these people? You can't let them live, right? Like you're going to have to kill them. Like you're gonna have to, right? They're gonna have to kill those guys, because you can't just like keep them somewhere for like 10 years and then drop them off. And out of all the stuff I researched, nobody's really kind of clarified what happens to those people who are, I guess, the sacrifices to make people think that an alien invasion or the rapture is happening. I'm just assuming you got to kill those people. You can't just drop them back. You just can't drop them back off, because they're going to be like, yeah, we were up there. We like partied for like a little bit, and then we came back. Then people are going to be like, wait a minute. Like this was a lie. You know what I mean? So, but I digress. I digress from that point. So now we get into the fun stuff. So through those 4 steps, you've been convinced. All right. Ooh. Convinced. So, how do I join this new world order? How can you join this new world order? Well, I'm glad we're on the same page, because it is it's actually quite simple. You just have to pledge your soul and life to Lucifer, and you got to make like a small sacrifice. That's it. But if you don't swear an oath, what will happen to me? I'm glad you asked. Because it's been broken into 7 categories by good old Sergi. right? He broke it into 7 categories. All right, Adam, we're going to go off. Ready? Category 1. Christian children would be kept for human sacrifice or sexual slaves. We're already off to a fucking bad start. All right? We're fucking kids. This is horrible. All right? We're on the island part 2. Jesus Christ. I guess we just can't have a world where we don't fuck kids. Weird that would be that's category 1. We're gonna go and ship them off to the old sex slave camp. All right? Horrible. Category 2. Prisoners will be used for medical experiments. So, sounding very concentration campy. All right. Next thing I should look into is Bear aspirin. You know how many people they had to kill to create that fucking pill during World War II? 3. Prisoners will be living organ donors. They're just gonna have like a bunch of prisoners who I'm assuming, right? Like you're gonna get the medical experiments done on you, lose like both your legs, both your arms, right? You're just a little nugget, but your liver, your kidneys, your lungs, your heart, your eyes, and any other viable organ that could be transplanted, that's good. So we're just gonna keep you on ice, all right? We're gonna keep you on ice, and then, buddy over here. You know, one of the big amigos, he needs a new lung. We'll go cut it off the armless, legless guy. We're going to get you that lung. Easy peasy. But we're not done because, hey, you managed to stay healthy. So you get put in category 4, which you just go to a slave labor camp. Big rocks into little rocks and really just building and doing whatever these motherfuckers need you to do. I cannot stress this enough. It literally just sounds like a remake of World War II. That's it. Like, this just seems like concentration camps. That's all it is. But it's not, I guess. It's the rapture, right? It's an alien invasion. It's to convince you feeble-minded people who aren't wearing the tin hats that we need a one true leader, one true God, Lucifer, or who we believe to be Lucifer, or some almighty entity. I couldn't tell you. But as we continue, we are going to have 5. So the 5th category. This one is kind of North Korea. Kind of real North Korea-y, like, right? So for those who are uncertain whether they want to join up, or maybe they in the beginning they were like, I don't really like this. You get to go to a re-education camp. You're going to get re-educated on the importance of the New World Order. There's people who believe this. This is nuts. And then, after you've been re-educated, you have to go live on television and glorify the New World Order. Category 6, executed. Just let that one simmer for a second. Could you imagine? This one blows my mind. Category 6 blows my mind the most. Executed. That's what it's listed as. Executed. Just gone, right? Can you just imagine? You're in line. All right? And they go, well, you're not a kid, so we can't fuck you. And you're like, whew. And they're like, we're not going to use you for medical experiments either. And you're like, all right. And they're like, you know what? We're not going to use you for your organs either. And you're like, off to the work camp it is for me. And they're like, no. We're actually not, you're healthy, but you're not healthy enough. Like, you know what? So we're going to go ahead and not send you to a work camp. And you're like, okay, so re-education center, I just got to say sorry. And they're like, no, no, no. Death. You had 5 opportunities, right? Well, technically 4 because you're not a child, right? But you had 4 opportunities that they could try to use you. And you're such a useless person, human being, that they're like, nah, fuck this person, kill him. Just get rid of him. You didn't even get a chance. You didn't even get a chance to pretend like you bought into the New World Order, to go to a re-education center, to then glorify them on TV. You're dead. That's how useless you are. Let that sink in. And then, conveniently, Category 7, that hasn't been classified yet. Good old Serge, he didn't have the time. He didn't know what Class 7 was going to be, but he knew there would be a 7th classification, which I don't know how you classify something after execution. What would you be? What would it be? Now, he released this theory of the Blue Beam Project in 1994, very shortly after a book was written by a guy named Joel Engel about Jean Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. Trek, whatever you, please don't crucify me in the comments. Anybody who's watching this and like, no, it's Trek, it's Star Trek, right? He was creator of Star Trek. All right. Now, this is where it gets funny, right? So there was a dude named Christopher Knowles, who is an American comic book artist, and he noted the similarities between the Blue Beam Project theory and Roddenberry's unproduced 1975 Star Trek screenplay titled The God Thing, all right, which was later recycled into a episode for Star Trek called Devil's Due, all right? Now, I have never been into a Star Trek fan, but I had to dive into it for this fucking video, and I'll never forgive myself, ever. Let's backtrack a little bit, all right? So Roddenberry got hired by Paramount in 1975, all right? And he pitched this idea for Star Trek to be a movie, right? And the movie was supposed to be the premise of a flying saucer, right, hovering above the earth, and it was programmed to send down people who look like prophets, and one of them being Jesus Christ. They didn't buy it. They didn't want it. Not in 1975. They were like, absolutely fucking not. No, we're not doing that. So how about you just write a show? Let's do a show, right? So fast forward though to 1991, it was recycled. And it was heavily altered. It was heavily stripped of like its, kind of like core idea, but a big portion of it did stay. All right. And that was turned into the episode called Devil's Due. Now, I hate myself for knowing this now. So essentially what happens in this episode is they go down to this planet called Ventax 2. So essentially what had happened was Ventax had made a Faustian deal, or a deal with the devil, with a entity called Ardra. All right. Which is Ventax's version of the devil. So it's like their mythological version of the devil, right? So they literally made a deal with the devil. And this devil, Ardra, basically says, hey man, I can help you end wars. I can bring your economical state back up. I can bring the overall health of the planet back by helping you guys with your pollution problem. You guys are going to be good for 1,000 years. And you know what I'm going to do after 1,000 years? And they're like, what? She's like, I'm going to come back. And you're going to be my slaves. So you get 1,000 good years. And then you're my slaves. And they were like, deal. What? Deal. You can have it, right? So as 1,000 years are coming to an end, right? They're seeing what, this mythological devil in the sky, and, and they're like, oh, right? Sound familiar? Right? And then they start experiencing earthquakes, right? So they're calling, they're help us. And the motherfuckers on the Enterprise show up. We got you. We're going to help you. It was a lie. It was all a lie. First of all, they had a arbitration. They literally had a meeting to go over the physical contract that was signed between the Ventax and their devil. All in all, the episode ends up spanning or wrapping up in they discovered that this Ardra was actually not the real Ardra, but instead an imposter just posing as this entity. And they were actually just a con artist. And that they had a ship that was cloaked, kind of like really close to the planet. And that's how they were like simulating all the earthquakes and natural disasters and whatnot. It turns out that they just over time, because they thought after 1,000 years they were going to be done for, just started working together as a planet. So through their like gradual, like hard work, unbeknownst to them, they saved their own planet, which is pointed out in the episode. There's no evidence that good old Surge, right, deliberately like committed fraud. It's believed that good old Surge believed that he was being fed secret information in the form of entertainment. Only him. He was the only guy. He was the one and only person who, Eureka! I'm being told that we're gonna be taken over by an entity posing as the devil, and I am the only one who's been told this. But I'll tell everyone. And just like the year 2012 and the Mayan calendar ending and the world ending in Y2K and COVID taking us all out, he predicted that it would happen like 3 separate times. And surprise, it never happened. I'm not sitting here and going to argue that I don't believe that the government probably has the means to create rain and snow and heat and earthquakes and all that stuff. However, I don't think we're dumb enough to really believe that, like, I don't know, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, that people are just getting beamed up by these drones in New Jersey. So this is, like I said, a pretty old conspiracy. And this guy, the guy who came up with the theorized this conspiracy of Blue Beam Project, people can't even agree on how he died. The official statement is that he had a heart attack. And like I said, other people are like, nah, he was assassinated. He knew too much. I argue that this guy did not know enough. Yeah. For those of you who I have offended during this video, keep the hat on, brother. Keep it on. Only you can protect you. And for those of you that I didn't offend, and you actually enjoyed this video and you thought it was kind of enlightening and fun, just remember, there are people who actually believe this conspiracy theory of everything that's going on and all the things that we could theorize, and we could sit here and say, nah, this is the real conspiracy. People are out here saying, no, just wait. They're going to start beaming into our brains. Get yourself a tin hat.